tucked away in between the Air Max 1 and the Air Max 90 is a really underrated pair of runners called the Air Max Lite. And in front of me, I've got 10 pairs of Air Max Lites. So back in the day, in 1987, Nike released the Air Max 1. And then 2 years later, in 1989, Nike released these and called them the Air Max 2. In 1990, this was the Air Max 3, and in 1991, the Air Classic BW used to be called the Air Max 4. But in the retro day, these are known as the Air Max Lites. And the shoes look a lot like a hybrid of the Air Max 1 mixed up with the Air Max 90, and they're super dope. Let's have a look at the first pair right here, because it's really the closest example that we're gonna have to one that looks just like the Air Max 1. So there's a lot on the upper of this shoe that really resembles the Air Max 1. In particular, the big bright red suede going around the upper. It's got the same visible air window as the Air Max 1, same mesh toe box. Where it starts to look like an Air Max 90 is actually gonna be with these plastic accents on the upper. I'm going to put this shoe gently down and then grab an Air Max 90. And you can see when you look at the Air Max 90 that there's these plastic bits and pieces of infrared on the shoe. And these have sort of been infused on the Air Max Lite. So I really like to think of the Air Max Lite as a hybrid of the Air Max 1 and the Air Max 90. They're really underrated, really under-retroed, and really underappreciated. I used to pick these shoes up at Nike outlets for $19.99 and sometimes $24.99, and they were always an international bestseller. So at the Nike outlets, they have a rule that each person can only buy 10 pairs of the same shoe each day. But you can buy different colors of the same shoe. And I used to go to the Nike outlets with friends so that each of us could buy 10 pairs of the same shoe. And I remember at around 08, 09, maybe 07, the outlets were stocked with Air Max Lites. I mean, there were like 5 or 10 different colors of the same shoe. And so I'd go in and I'd be limited to 10 pairs of each. But sometimes I'd buy like 8 different colorways and leave the store with 80 pairs of shoes. And my friends would do the same thing. And these shoes always sold abroad. Particularly to Germany and the Netherlands, which is the same thing with the classic BW. Over there in Europe, they really have an affinity for the early Air Maxes, like the first 5 or 6 years of the Air Max line. So anyway, over here, the 07s that we already looked at look just like the Air Max 1s. In front of you right here are a pair of vintage-looking Air Max Lites. The red pair and the blue pair, they were released as a pack in 2011, and the reason why they're made to look vintage is because if you look at the midsoles and then also the outsole, they're sort of weathered, yellowed, they look like they're old and deteriorated. Really cool. I thought when Nike retroed these shoes that it was going to usher an era of the Air Max Lite, but there really haven't been that many Air Max Lites retroed in the last few years. Over here, we've got some neon colorways. I picked those up at the outlets for $24.99. Oftentimes, Nike will go with a color, it'll be a hit, and they'll release a bunch of different shoes in the same color. This pattern has an Air Stab that was released exactly the same way. There's also a pair of Huarache trainers, and these shoes used to be like a dime a dozen at the outlets. A few years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, people weren't as crazy about the bright neon colors, so shoes like this would end up at the outlets for like 20 bucks. I'd scoop them up, flip them on eBay, make people happy all over the world because they can't find these shoes anywhere but eBay. Anyway, up here in front of me, all of these also came from the outlets. This pair over here is actually one of the more valuable pairs of Air Max Lites. You may recognize the colorway. It's just like a pair of Air Max 95s with this cool gray, metallic silver, neon yellow upper. Very cool shoes. I think Nike needs to retro Air Max Lites and collaborate with boutiques and make a bunch of limited edition super cool ones. It'll really increase the hype for this shoe, and then they can elevate the Air Max Lite to the same level as the Air Max 1 and the Air Max 90 and give us a bunch of different versions of it. Who knows? We'll see.